questions about what lurks in the dark. This is Para-Scope Uncensored.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 3 years in the making return to the airwaves of Para-Scope Uncensored. I am your host, ClarissaVazquez, and joining me at the helm is my fabulous co-host, the man simply known as Jax.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing wonderful.
Awesome. So, Para-Scope, we're back on the air. What do you think?
This is an honor and a privilege for me, to tell you the truth. I want to thank you for asking me to be the co-host of this show, and I want to thank Daryl and Katie for having us on the network. Really means a lot to me.
Well, you were pretty integral in the show coming back because you've been on me since I dropped the show 3 years ago. You're like, you got to bring it back. You got to bring it back. And so when I finally made the decision to bring it back, you know, I called you up. I'm like, okay, if I do this, you're going to be my co-host. So, you know, this was mostly on you. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have brought the show back.
But it needs to keep running, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, you know, but I'm excited about this. You know, this show. This is the third network that this show has been on, and you know, in my opinion, you know, it's the best network this show has ever been on, and we've got a lot of great affiliates that we need to recognize. You know, in addition to broadcasting on lnmradionetwork.com, listeners can also find us on High Point Radio, 1620 AM and 100.5 FM of New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. WCET 107, Columbia, South Carolina. KOY 1230 in Phoenix, Arizona. KYAH 540 AM, Utah's Talk Authority. And they can also find us on Daily Motion TSL, TalkStream Live Paranormal Radio, TuneIn, Twitch, iTunes, and soon they'll be able to hear Para-Scope archives on YouTube. So lots of places where you can hear the latest and greatest in Para-Scope Uncensored. So for our listeners that are not completely familiar with Para-Scope, for people that haven't followed us from network to network over the years, the original vision for Para-Scope was to have a show that kind of tells it like it is, gets down to the nuts and bolts, you know, where we're not afraid to ask the hard questions. And, you know, through the years, I think we've accomplished that. But I think with having you, Jax, as a co-host, I think we're going to be able to take it one step further and really start shining a light on some of the truths that are affiliated with paranormal phenomena and paranormal research. Am I right?
Yes, you are right.
So, and we've got a great guest for tonight.
Yes.
I'm excited. Our official return to the airwaves. We've got an awesome guest. After we come back from our bottom of the hour break, we're going to have Rick McCallum from Hollywood Ghost Hunters.
Woohoo!
And I don't know if you can see this, Jax, but Daryl, our producer, was just doing the happy dance at his desk. Yeah. So we're going to have Rick on the line here in just under 30 minutes. We're going to be talking to him, finding out the latest and the greatest in the world of the paranormal from his perspective. And he's got a unique take on it because, you know, he and a couple other Hollywood A-listers, you know, they go out and they do the same things that we do. But I think they have different opportunities than we have, don't you?
Yes. Yeah, they have a lot more, like you said, a lot more opportunities to do a lot more than what we can. It's
I don't know if it's a money thing or if it's a celebrity status thing. But some of the places that they get to go and look at are just phenomenal.
It's probably a combination of both.
Could be. And I know we were talking last night on Hidden World that Rick actually has 5 out of 6 of my books. So I know you have all 6 and I have all 6, but Rick has 5 out of 6. And so I'm going to have to grill him a little bit and go, so what do you think of my books?
Yeah. I'd like to hear his opinion on it.
Well, and speaking of books, you are actually going to submit a couple of cover designs for the new book that Chris and I are working on.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Yep. So that's exciting. And dipping your hands in the literary world, or rather dipping your toes in the literary world a little bit. Even if it's just a book cover. But you weren't involved in the book project that I worked on with He Who Must Not Be Named, were you?
No, I wasn't. No.
Okay. I thought that was the case, because I know I wrote the foreword and designed the cover, and I did a lot of work on that book. And it's unfortunate that things happened the way that they did, and now I really wish my name wasn't attached to that project. But
yeah.
Gotta do a better job picking my friends, I guess.
Well, Clarissa, we were all blindsided by that whole situation. So
I know. And, it's really sad because when people watch paranormal TV, they kind of see the people that go out to these dark and spooky places. They kind of see them as heroes. There's a little bit of hero worship going on with them, because paranormal investigators as a whole, whether they're researching cryptids or UFOs or ghosts, they are ready, willing, and able to do what a lot of people are afraid to do. And so there's a lot of hero worship attached to paranormal investigators, particularly the guys on TV. But this individual in question was not one on TV, not for lack of trying, though. He really wanted to be on TV, and he went and got himself in trouble with the law and really made a bad name for a lot of us. And so it was sad for all of us that were affiliated with him.
Yes.
So that's, one thing I definitely try to encourage listeners as well as clients. If somebody comes up to me and says, I'm considering contacting a paranormal investigation research organization to help me out, one thing I always suggest to them, and I will suggest the same thing to you, dear listeners, is ask for references. Any organization worth their salt will have references. I know, Jax, your team has references. My team has references. Any team that is worth their salt will have written references that are available for prospective clients to look at and review. At the end of every case, whether it's residential or commercial, I give my clients a survey to fill out and a postage paid self-addressed stamped envelope. All they have to do is fill it out, stick it in the envelope, and drop it in the mail, and it comes straight to my house, so that I can see, where my team excelled and where we might need work. And it also serves as a reference for, prospective clients. If we've got a client that says, this is an A+ organization, they did great. I can show that to clients. Or if I have a client that says, they really did good here, but, they really, didn't help me where I thought I needed to be helped. Other clients need to see that too, because I will tell them that we are an observe and report organization. If they want help with removal or things like that, we can refer them to an outside source, but CCPI is strictly observe and report. And I know there are a lot of people out there in the paranormal community that say that's not right, that's not fair. You go in and all you do is look and you don't do anything to resolve it. But but that is the nature of our organization, and we do have outside agencies that are ready and willing to step up on a referral basis. And so, thoroughly vet your investigators before you consider bringing them into your home or workspace, dear listeners, because that could, in the long run, save you a lot of hassle and a lot of heartache, and money too. If you've got a team out there that wants to charge you money, tell them to go away, because they're not in it for the right reasons.
Yes. Actually, there's a team out there right now that I heard about, not giving any names, but first investigation is free, and the second one they charge. And that is not right in my book. You don't charge anything. You're in this for the research. You're in this to help people, and those two are the main factors of excuse me, what's how we do things, at least in my book.
No, you're absolutely right. And helping people and researching, that's the primary purpose for being in this field of research. And any evidence that we obtain, and I hate using the words evidence and proof, so any usable data, any credible, juicy data that we obtain is icing on the cake.
Yes. Yep. I agree.
So, for those that are listening, if you're considering bringing in a paranormal investigation team, make sure you thoroughly vet them and make sure they can provide you references and aren't going to charge you for their services, because when you look at it, Jax, if I'm going to pay somebody money, I'm going to expect something in return for it. And, I'm going to expect a product or a service in return. And there really is no product to be delivered in a paranormal investigation. I mean, yeah, we can give them a typed up copy of the report, or maybe a CD or a flash drive that has, some EVPs or juicy, video footage or something on it. But, really, that's, in my opinion, that's not a product. There are times where we go to a client's home or business and, we conduct a thorough investigation and then come back and go, sorry, we got nothing. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then like you said, it's not so much a product, but it's a service.
Mm-hmm.
But still, at the same point, you're walking into somebody's home or business, and that takes a lot of guts to open up the door to let strange people into your house or business. More so your house than anything.
Yeah.
And if you don't have, and if you, like you said, come back and say, "Oh, we don't have anything," and you're charging that doesn't even make sense to me.
Yeah. And so people are going to be like, what did I just waste my money on?
Exactly.
And, and then on the flip side of that coin, you've got other teams that'll go in there and say, there's a naturally occurring explanation for everything that is going on, in this home or business. And you're able to prove that. The clients aren't satisfied with that answer. They're convinced that it's paranormal or ghostly or extraterrestrial or what have you. And so they'll bring in another team that goes, oh, well, you've got a portal and you've got a poltergeist and you've got a succubus and you've got this. And when really that's not the case. And so again, I can't stress this enough. If you're considering bringing in a team of paranormal researchers, thoroughly vet them, ask for references, check for longevity, find out how long this team's been around. And if it's a new team, find out how long the investigators have actually been investigating. Because there's organizations like yours, ECCPI has only been around for a year, but you've been investigating longer than I have. And I've been doing this for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And so, do your homework, do your research, and, yes, it takes a lot of courage for people to invite a group of strangers into their home or business, oftentimes at night.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to make sure that you're allowing in, people that you can trust. But at the same token, the investigators are going into homes or businesses at night of people they don't know either. And that takes a lot of guts too.
Yes, absolutely.
And there have been, investigators that have been assaulted or even kidnapped by clients. There was one about a year ago where a team of investigators was locked in a basement by a client. And it was crazy. And luckily, one of the investigators had broken the rules and actually had their cell phone on them because they follow the very strict guideline, no cell phones during an investigation because cell phone transmissions can interfere with equipment. But one of the investigators had slipped and left their cell phone in their pocket, and they were able to, contact the authorities and ultimately be rescued. But, so it's not just a case for, where the clients have to be careful allowing these people into their homes. The investigators have to be careful going into these people's homes as well. And I don't know if you do this, Jax, with your team, but with my team, we always make sure that, friends or family or, other investigators that are not participating, what have you, always have the address of where we're going to be. And if we don't check in when we're supposed to check in, they check in on us. And if contact can't be made, they have the address where we're supposed to be, and they know to send out the authorities.
Wow.
Now, do you guys do that too?
Tell you the truth, no. We're gonna start now, though. That's a good idea. I never even thought of that.
Yeah, we worked a case, not this last weekend, but the weekend before, where things just weren't adding up. Things were just a little hinky. And there were 4 of us that were going, and so, I made sure I told my mom and the team historian, the address of where we were going to be. And I said, I will check in at this time and again at this time. And I did. I checked in. And, with the first check-in, I'm like, everything's cool. There's nothing to be worried about. The case isn't what we thought it was going to be. We were actually thinking that it was possibly a case of possession. But it turns out it was an extraterrestrial encounter. And so, that's why things weren't quite adding up, because we were kind of jumping the gun a little bit and trying to diagnose before we were actually had boots on the ground. So, live and learn. When you've been doing this as long as we have, you tend to do that. You hear the symptoms, and like a doctor, you try to diagnose, before you even see the patient, and it comes back to bite you sometimes. And, but we ended up having a lot of fun, and, but had our safeguards in place because things just sounded a little hinky, and we needed to make sure that we were safe and protected, as well as our clients.
Yeah, safety first, always.
Yeah. But and so you worked a case this last weekend.
I did.
And I know we talked about it a little bit on Hidden World last night, but for our listeners that weren't tuned in last night, you know, I think you need to tell them about what happened.
Well, we were sitting in the living room. I was sitting next to one of my female investigators, and right across the room in a chair, another one of my female investigators was sitting in the chair, legs crossed. She had her resting her head up on her fist. And all of a sudden, just bang, this stick figure popped up, like right on top of her. And I'm like, what the heck is this thing? And so I asked her, I said, can do me a favor, put one hand straight up in the air. And she did. It seemed like a delay. That's, because the stick figure did match her.
Right.
So then I told her to put her hand down, and the stick figure put its hand down too, because with the SLS camera, you can get a stick figure with a human being as well. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, do me a favor. Put both hands up. So she put both hands up, and the stick figure did not move. It did not follow her at all. So I was like, something's not right here. And the way that the stick figure was on top of her, it was not the way that she was sitting. Mm-hmm. It had its left leg straight, and it had its left leg bent. Like it didn't do this, but like if you sit down, sometimes you have one leg straight, one leg bent, and you put your arm on your bent leg.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't have its arm on its leg, but then it proceeded to like put its hand down, like between its legs, and its arm started going up and down. And I'm like, what is this? Am I seeing this right? This thing was getting its rocks off.
It was pleasuring itself.
Oh. I'll tell you what, I'm still like in total shock.
Well, there was another incident that night that involved you with the SLS camera, am I right?
Say what? Say that again?
Wasn't there another incident that night that involved you and the SLS camera?
Yeah. Yeah. Later on in the night.
Daryl is sending messages via Skype, folks, which is why Jax is having a little trouble concentrating.
Yeah. Stop it, Daryl. Yeah. Another female investigator, the one that was sitting with me on the couch, had the SLS camera in the master bedroom. I was sitting in the chair, and the client was sitting on the bed. And lo and behold, she started getting another stick figure on top of me, giving me a lap dance.
Wow, chicka wow wow, chicka wow wow.
Now, none of this, excuse me, none of this is confirmed, but supposedly there was a pimp that lived, I don't know if it was that apartment or somewhere in that complex, that was beating one of his prostitutes. and she turned around and killed him.
Ah.
So I don't know if there's no confirmation and we couldn't find anything if there truly was a pimp and a prostitute. But it kind of fits together, if you know what I'm saying. The way the things played
SLS
out.
behavior matched the.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting. So, you know that for Hidden World, Chris and I have been researching the phenomena of spectrophilia pretty in depth. When you were getting your ethereal lap dance, did you feel anything? Did you? Was there a sensation of pressure? Was there a cold spot or a hot spot, or did you feel anything, or was it just like nothing was going on? You would have been none the wiser unless they pointed it out.
I was sitting forward in the chair, and then when I was told that was what was happening, I kind of leaned back on the chair. I did. I leaned straight back on the chair and.
Really?
And oh yeah, I did, and just to see if I could feel something, and nothing at all. I felt nothing. Darn it.
Okay. So it wasn't good for you.
No. Too bad.
Too bad. Oh. Well, we have to take our bottom of the hour break, Jax, but when we come back, we're going to have Rick McCallum from Hollywood Ghost Hunters on the line. So be sure to stay tuned. You're listening to Para-Scope Uncensored on the L&M Radio Network. We will be right back. And welcome back to Para-Scope Uncensored here on the L&M Radio Network. I'm your host, ClarissaVazquez. Riding shotgun tonight is the man, the myth, the legend, the one simply known as Jax.
Hey, everyone.
And folks, we've got our guest on the line. We are so excited. He had us cracking up during the break, so we can already tell this is going to be a great interview. Folks, you know him. Well, you've probably seen him and didn't even know you were seeing him. If you've watched some of the big Hollywood blockbuster movies and a lot of horror movies and stuff. But he's probably gained most of his notoriety lately for being part of Hollywood Ghost Hunters. So please join us in welcoming Mr. Rick McCallum to the show. Good evening, Rick.
Good evening, Clarissa.
So,
and that other guy. I mean, he's a myth and a legend. I don't even need to say his name.
That's right.
How you doing, Rick?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So,
very welcome.
For our listeners that aren't quite familiar with you and everything, we really want to know how Hollywood Ghost Hunters came to be.
Well, it was almost by accident, to tell you the truth. I've been ghost hunting since I was 13, which, if you noticed by my gray hair, wasn't last week. It wasn't last decade. It was practically not even this millennium. That's how old I am. Actually, let's put it this way. I've been around since the Dead Sea was only sick, so I'm not that young. But Kane Hodder, who plays Jason in the Friday the 13th, and he plays Victor Crowley in the Hatchet series and pretty much every other serial killer murderer and all the other movies, too. Mm-hmm. He and I and Ari Mihailoff, who plays Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, were doing a movie in Mansfield, Ohio. And R.A. had already gone, so it was just me and Kane. It was about 2 in the morning, and we were all the way back. We just got done shooting. Everybody was gone, and we're all the way at the back of the cell blocks. Now, if you've ever seen Mansfield, Ohio, the prison, mm-hmm. It's perfect for a horror movie. There's no lights inside. The moonlight comes in from outside. All the cells are rusted. It's creepy as hell, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. So we're walking along, and Kane looks at me and goes, "Hey, why don't we ghost hunt?" Okay, I had no idea he was into ghost hunting. I'd never talked about ghost hunting pretty much to anybody, So we're walking along, and we're going through the cell blocks and stuff, and we get down lower, and we're walking along, and we see up ahead a shadow man go to walk about maybe 75 yards in front of us. So I look down at him like, holy crap, and I turn around to tell Kane what I see, and he's gone. And I'm like, oh, crud. Even the big, scary Jason guy runs away, right? And I hear running, and I turn around and I look, and he had gone behind me, and he was running directly down the thing at it. And I was like, oh, if I'm going to start a ghost hunting group, this is the guy that's got to be my partner, right? So, if he's going to go attack it, that's what I want, because I don't know if anybody saw us on Ghost Adventures. I actually explained there, how I really liked Kane, other than the fact that he's my best friend, was the fact that whenever I would ghost hunt with anybody else, you'd start to hear a noise and they would start looking like Michael Jackson moonwalking. It's like, no, I don't want people to go backwards. I want somebody to go forwards, right? I mean, nothing bothers me more than I see people, go ghost hunting. They go hunting through all this place. They make the expense of buying the equipment, going to the place, airfare, hotel rooms, food, transportation, and they get out there and they see something and they run away. It's like, you went through all this thing to find this. Where are you going? Stay there. So that's one of my pet peeves in life with ghost hunting, is people who run away.
Yeah, I've had to have that conversation with some of my investigators from time to time, going, this is what we're here to find, and you're running away from it. And
yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
No. No, it really doesn't.
Well, I've told people, I don't know if you know this, but we only have one rule in the Hollywood Ghost Hunters, and that's if you run, you're done. If you run, we're throwing you out. But there's only one exception. If I look up and I see Kane running, all bets are off, because if something scares that guy, I don't want to see what it is. I'm running with him. I'm not hanging in to see what he got scared from.
Yeah.
Well, Kane's not a small guy either, so if he's running, that's pretty impressive in and of itself.
Well, Kane and I are pretty much the same size. He's a little bit wider than I am, a little more muscular, but we're pretty much the same size. And RA is 6'5" and 330 pounds. So when we get together, usually the building tilts, But, and the fact is, we're all slow, so there ain't no point in us running away anyhow.
Oh my gosh! So what was it that actually got you into the ghost hunting business then?
Oh, I'm really glad you asked that, because just this week, I finally solved a mystery with the help of somebody on Facebook.
Okay.
When I was 13 years old, now this was, all right, I'm going to wrap myself out, 51 years ago, my grandfather had died suddenly. We lived in Chicago, and my mother and I put him on a train because he wanted to be buried in Paducah, Kentucky.
Okay.
Well, we went down there, and my mom did not have a lot of money, so, the train trip and everything else was taking up most of it. So when we got there, we tried to find a hotel as close to the cemetery as we could get, so that we could walk over there the next day and save cab fare and stuff like that. So fortunately, there was like this older place right near there downtown, a 2-story place, and I remember it as clear as a bell. We go walking in there, and my mom asked for a room, and the guy goes, "Well, we've only got one left," he says, "and it's haunted." And I'm like, "Haunted?" I'm 13 years old. This is like a gold ticket to Disneyland. Haunted room, woo! Right? So in we go. And there's this room, and it's probably 22 feet wide and maybe 15 feet deep. And back then, the floors were wooden. And my mother's bed was on one wall, my bed was on the other, and they had rollers so you could put them wherever you wanted to. Right?
Okay.
The windows were real specific. I could look out and I could see, the neon from the street and everything else. And in the middle of the night, I heard a scream, and I popped up and I looked over and I see my mother's bed come flying towards me, right? And then I realized that my bed is flying towards her. And the two beds just smashed together. I mean, not like clink, I mean, bam, in the middle of the room.
Wow.
Right? So we're like, what the heck was that? So my mother was a member of Mensa. She was pretty smart. So we were debunking before we even knew what debunking was, right? Mm-hmm. So what we had actually done is we took the beds and put them back to the thing. We thought maybe a truck had gone by and the floors were warped and, just got them rolling. So
Right.
what we did is we got them all over there, and we shoved them as hard as we could, and they only went about 3 feet. So we knew that wasn't just something that just started rolling on its own and kept going, because it just wouldn't go. So I got a glass, and I turned it on its side, so it was round, and tried rolling it, just letting it roll. And it would go a few feet, and that was it. So the floors weren't warped either. So we're like, okay, something happened there.
Yeah,
so
that sounds like there was a lot of force.
Yeah, and it really was. And that was the one thing that really kind of concerned us a little bit. But we hung in there, stayed there the night, and that really got me interested in stuff. But the interesting thing is, I put on Facebook, and I had been trying to find that same hotel because I plan on going back there, right?
Okay.
And because every year I get invited to Scarefest, and as long as I'm in Kentucky, I might as well hit Paducah, But this one girl, who's a friend of mine from Scarefest, she goes, "Oh, that sounds like," and I won't tell you the name of the hotel. "It sounds like this." And I thought, okay, well, I'll look. And I went on the website, and right there, and one of the first pictures I see is the room that we were in. I mean, it's been upgraded since 51 years ago. There's carpet, and, it's a little nicer, but the windows and everything else, the size of the room, it's the room. So
Wow.
I'm going back. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't been to Scarefest in a few years. I've been a featured presenter at Scarefest in the past, and I haven't been there for a few years, but I always enjoy watching your posts, from Scarefest and some of your other adventures. I mean, you have a great time no matter where you're at and what you're doing.
Well, I don't get out much. So I actually get paroled, from my apartment. I mean, I like to go have fun. No, I'm just one of those people that I love people. I love people coming up and talking to me. I love being, going and doing stuff. So, love Scarefest. And by the way, you got to become another presenter, because I read your book. By the
Which
way,
one?
Thank you for sending it to me. The Colorado one.
Oh, okay.
And anybody that's an aspiring ghost hunter should read that before they get going to do anything else, because it had a lot of really good tips in it.
Well, thank you very much for the kudos. I appreciate that. And I think you have a copy of the latest one too.
I do. I have several ClarissaVazquez books to go through. Looking forward to it too.
Awesome. Well, no, I'm really glad you enjoyed ghost hunting in Colorado, and I'm excited to get your take on the psychosomatic pareidolia book.
Yeah, that's always something that interested me too. I don't know about the psychosomatic pareidolia, but I mean the pareidolia thing. I think sometimes things can cross over. I think sometimes people will see something and go, "It's pareidolia," when it's really something. I think sometimes some things get lost in the pareidolia easy fix. You know what I mean? Easy explanation. Other times I'm 100% sure that that's exactly what it is, the pareidolia. So, it's just like anything else. I was at Scarefest, and one of the girls came up to me, and she goes, "Here, I want you to take a look at this and give me your expert opinion." I said, "Okay." And it was a basketball court, and it was night. And on the far wall, there was a light that was straight up and down. And she goes, "What do you think of that?" I said, "Honestly, I think it's a headlight that went through one of the lights up above, because it's square and it's straight up and down. I think it's probably a headlight, right?" And she goes, "Oh, I thought I caught something in there." I said, "Well, that doesn't mean you didn't." She goes, "Well, could it be something?" I said, "No, it's probably a headlight. But what about up here?" And she goes, "What?" I said, "Look in the window." She goes, "Oh my God, there's a face in the window." She goes, "For all the times we've sat here," she goes, "we've looked over this. Everybody's seen this. You look at it for 10 seconds and you spotted it." And I said, "Well, isn't that why you asked me to look at it?"
Yeah, it's always good to have an additional set of eyes, looking at whether it's video footage or photographic footage or even audio. It's always good to have, an extra person going over some of that data and getting another opinion on it.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, because something happened to me in Roslyn, at Roslyn Castle, right next to Roslyn Chapel, which is a very famous place. That's where they think the Knights Templar brought the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant. So it's a very, very well-known place. And I was there with some ghost hunters from England about midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and we're standing out on this bridge. And one of them asked me, they said, do you ever get any good EVPs? I said, well, I've got one here. I said, it's short, but it's kind of interesting. And I played it for him. And what it was at the Houdini estate here in California. Mm-hmm. And me and one of my guys, Ed Ackerman, who's another one of our team, went walking through this basement, and this huge shadow went across the wall. So naturally, he and I kept going in and out, trying to create another shadow. We couldn't make any shadow whatsoever. So we're like, okay, that's interesting. And there were 2 beds in there, and I went in and I put down the K2 meter and my voice recorder on the far bed, and I sat down on a futon about 10 feet away. Well, Ed comes by and he picks up the K2 meter, and you hear on the recording, the whole thing's like 6 or 7 seconds long, because I cut down the rest of the stuff. And he says, I'm going to get a bass reading, and then you hear, no. I mean, right into the recorder. So I thought, this is really cool. And the guy goes, holy cow, that's amazing. I said, yeah, the no. And he goes, no, what it says right before it. Now, I've had this for like 5 years. I'm like, what do you mean what it says before it? He goes, there's 4 words before it. I said, you're kidding. He goes, no, there's 4 words before it. I said, all right. I said, I don't hear it. He goes, listen real super carefully. jack it up. And when I did, especially when I got back home and listened to it on my computer, could really jack it up, I asked him what it said. And he said, I'll tell you after you hear it. So I looked over and I looked up. I said, it says, get back here, punk. And he goes, it's exactly what it says. So
wow.
it says, get back here, punk. No. So whatever it was did not want us to go into the bathroom, and it made it real clear we weren't welcome in there after we got there. So that was really a pretty good hunt that night.
That is
so you're right.
Cool.
Having somebody else listen to an audio, I never would have heard it if it wasn't for that guy.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, and it's not uncommon for me if I've got something, really compelling, I'll send it out to other investigation teams. I'll send it to Jax and his team or send it to Chris Carr, my co-host on another show. And Chris actually co-authored the Pareidolia book with me. I'll if I've got something really good, I'll send it out to another team and go, what do you think? And, and sometimes they'll say, well, I think you've got something really good. And other times they'll say, I think it might be another investigator in the distance based on, what they're saying or what have you. And it's the same thing with video footage or photographs or what have you. It's great to have an additional perception, somebody that's removed from the case, analyzing it.
Yeah, well, sometimes too, you can get fooled on stuff. We had done a investigation at Linda Vista Hospital, and I was walking down a hallway, and the place is locked off. It's just us, mm-hmm. right? And I see a figure move really quickly, about maybe 3 feet, and go in the door at the end. Boom, gone. I mean, really quickly. And I'm like, what the hell was that? So I ran it back, and there's somebody, really quickly going, and I was like, okay, this is something that, I know where all my guys are. They're behind me, right? So finally, as we were leaving, I asked the guy, I said, did you come in and go down that far door? And he goes, yeah. He says, but I tried to do it quick so, I wouldn't mess up your filming. I was like, okay. So sometimes a little extra digging and you can find the real truth. But it sure looked good on film seeing this full body guy, boom, but it was actually
right?
just a guy,
Yeah. And, and debunking is really 98% of what we do. You got to factor out the possible before you can figure in the impossible, really. And
that's what I say. When there's nothing left, then you've got something.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So
it's a weird way of putting it, but when you got nothing left, then you have something. But it's my mind works in mysterious ways. Let's put it that way.
So would you say that that EVP and the Houdini location was that your most compelling investigation to date, or do you have a juicier one?
No, not even close.
Okay, don't hold out on me.
Well, I'll tell you something new that you guys may not have heard of, and the reason I say you may not have heard of, I had never heard of it either, and it just happened to happen to me. There's this one African-American lady called me named Donna, and Donna was one of these ladies. She's about 60, And she was one of these ladies that should have had her own sitcom. Super personality, bubbly, I go over to her house, and another one of my guys comes with me, and we go over there. And when I go into place, I can usually feel fairly quickly if something's there. And I didn't feel a thing. So I went up to her loft, investigated up there, went all around with my equipment, didn't get a blip, didn't get anything. So I come back down, and I said, Donna, I got to tell you, I don't think your apartment's haunted. And she goes, oh, I don't either. I mean, you can imagine the look on my face. What? Why am I here? What am I doing here? Right? And she goes, I think something's attached to me. So I was thinking, okay, how do I quantify something being attached to her? You could say, okay, this is what, some people say these are the signs of an attachment. How can I quantify that this is actually true?
Right.
So I thought to myself, I said, you know what? She doesn't want it to be actually true. She just wants to feel better. So how can I do that? So I grabbed my K2 and I said, look, Donna, it's not going off. I'm rubbing it right next to you and everything else, not going off at all. I said, let me grab my night vision camera and let me see if we get anything. So I do that, right? Not a thing. So I said, okay, one last thing. I said, this is something new. I haven't had this before. Let me put my infrared camera on you, right? And you know that a person is hot. They'll glow orange and yellow and white,
right.
The heat. And that anything that is supposedly a spirit or something will be very dark because it's cold, right? Well, I take a picture of her and I almost fell over because right there, right off to the side of her stomach is a thing roughly the size of two fists that's dark violet or black.
Oh,
and I
wow.
just looked at it, I said, Donna, did you have something cold on your stomach, like watching TV or something before we came in? She goes, no. I said, do you have anything underneath your tunic? I mean, do you have cell phone, anything other? She goes, no, I don't have anything under there. So I said, well, would you do me a favor? Would you go up the stairs and then walk back down the stairs because I wanted to see if it was a camera anomaly? Well, she walks all the way down the stairs, boing, 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 and it stays in the same place. So I'm like, boy, oh boy, this is interesting. So she gets back down there and she goes, I showed her the next picture and she goes, well, what does it mean? I said, well, the first thing I'm going to tell you is you should see a doctor because you may have a blockage that's causing something to really, the blood flow to stop there. So I said, I would really see a doctor. And she goes, well, what if it's an attachment? And I said, well, what everybody says, and I've seen it actually work, is that you need to tell it to leave in no uncertain terms. And she says, well, should I get mad? And I said, oh, yes. And she goes, how mad? I said, pretend you walked in and your boyfriend was fooling around with your sister. And she goes, oh, that's mad, right? And I said, yeah. And she goes, do you mind if I use my faith? And I said, no, if that's what makes you feel like it'll work, go for it. So the dumbest thing I've ever done is not filming her doing this because she was freaking awesome. I mean, it would have gone viral in a second. She throws her hands over her head in fists and she goes, the power of God commands you to leave. And then she's going, get out, get out. And I mean, she was so sincere, I almost left, right?
Right.
She was really going to town. So after a couple of minutes, she stops and she's a little spent. I mean, she put a lot of energy into it. So I sat there, let her calm down for a minute or two, took another picture, and it was gone.
Wow.
Now, I can't explain it. I mean, you cannot fool a thermal imager. It's either hot or it's cold. You can't fake it, unless you want to put ice on somebody and then take a quick picture or something. I imagine that would work. But,
right.
You can't manipulate a thermal imager, at least as far as I know, But here was something that was there in the first two pictures. She told to go away, and it was gone. So, I mean, that piece of evidence right there really intrigues me. I've had so many other things. I mean, so many things that are really actually hard to wrap your head around. One of them happened in Yorkshire, England, at a place called Bolton Abbey, and I was there with two other groups. Premier Paranormal from Edinburgh, and Anubis Investigations from Liverpool. And we all teamed up, and I was walking around the Abbey and things, and there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of K2 stuff going on, a lot of noises. Two different people saw a big dark shadow walking along. One girl that was with me, because I always dress in black because, well, it's slimming. Right?
Yeah, that's why I do it too.
Yeah, she came out of the chapel, which is there's no roof and there's no floor. The floor is all grass, But she comes walking out of there, and she looks at me. She goes, "How long have you been out here?" I said, "Oh, 10, 15 minutes." She goes, "I just followed you out here." And I said, "Not me. I've been out here." And she goes, "Well, I was following a big black shape in the dark. I thought it was you." And I said, well, surprise. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. But then we went back in, and I saw a black shadow, and I turned around and looked at it, and she saw it, and went around the corner. We took off around the corner after it, and it was gone. But the thing that really happened there was they had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people up on the altar, 5 of them facing one person who was running the show. And he was trying to call spirits to come forward and everything else. Mm-hmm. And in the midst of doing this, now this place, they had a fence around it because people had been doing satanic worship and rituals on the altar. Now, the altar wasn't a real altar. It was just a raised section of dirt, that was covered in grass. But it was up, probably 2 feet higher than the regular ground. And me and 2 guys who were bouncers from Liverpool, who were also there, they were guests of the other groups, we saw a light go off on the other side of the chapel, so we started to walk around, of the Abbey, and I hear all this chaos. So we go scooting back over there, and I see the one guy standing, the girl standing in front of him. The next 3 people are down on their knees, except for one of them's laying on his side, and the last guy who brought me there is laying flat on his back, totally knocked out. And, I mean, I was just there seconds ago. So I'm standing there with the other 2 guys, and I see them, all on their hands and knees trying to help Brian. And in movie business, I'm certified in a whole bunch of different life-saving things and stuff. And I said, get him over here, So this guy, Peter, jumps over the fence, and he goes running over there, and he picks him up, and he runs him back, and he throws him over the fence like a sack of wheat, right? And me and the other bouncer catch him. Well, we take him around, and we set him down, and he's leaning on... The guy's name was Chunk, and he's leaning there, and all of a sudden I start to see he's got all these micro, tremors going on, which tells me one of 2 things. Either something's attaching to him or he's going into shock. Right? Now, the fact that he got knocked out, it's probably he's going into shock. So I grab him, put him on his back. The girl puts her 2 equipment cases up, put his feet under there. I take my coat off and, put it over him, and they take their coats off. We're all standing there, put it over him. Finally, after about 15 minutes, he comes back around. Never seen anything like this. I'm slapping him and rubbing his face and his arms and everything else, trying to make sure his blood flow's going. And we finally get him up. And I asked each one of these people. Now, they had no way of talking to each other because they were all right there, right next to me in a little circle looking at Brian. So I took each one to the side and asked them what happened. And every one of them, except for one, said the same thing. They said, Gary, the guy who was running the thing, was arguing with the girl in front, saying he wanted her on her knees, and she was arguing with him, and he yelled, "Do not defy me." And she said right then she saw what looked like a goat's head with no eyes fly through his face right at her. She said, and she screamed no, and that was the first thing we heard that got us turning around to go back. And the other girl that was behind, she was a medium. She said she saw the goat's head. The next guy didn't get to ask because he was busy doing other stuff. I asked the guy that was on his side, he goes, and this gave it a little more value, by the way, and you'll see why. I said, what did you see? And he goes, well, I saw something look like a ram's head with no eyes. So the fact that he didn't say the same thing, the goat's head, he said a ram's head, gave a little more value to me because it meant like, nobody was sitting around telling stories. Right. And the fact is I know these people and I trust them, so I didn't think they were telling stories in the first place, So finally I asked Brian, the guy that it happened, I said, Brian, what the heck happened? He goes, I don't know. I was standing there 1 second, and the next thing I know, you were slapping me in the face. So I can't even wrap my head around that. I have no way of explaining what happened there. It's one of the strangest things I've ever run across.
Wow. Well, we have to go to commercial. But when we come back, I know Jax has questions that he's been writing down for the last couple of days, that he wanted to ask you. So we'll get to some of Jax's questions. I think Daryl, our producer, may have a question or two. But I want to hear some more stories about some of your experiences, and I definitely want to talk about some of your overseas adventures. Oh my gosh, I am so jealous.
Hey, here's another one going to get you jealous. I'm going to Lep Castle in Ireland in March.
Oh, no. Please take me with you. Please take me with you. Because you and I have talked about how Ireland is on my bucket list, and
I know.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Okay, we will discuss that when we come back from break. You're listening to Para-Scope Uncensored on the L&M Radio Network. We will be right back. Welcome back to Para-Scope Uncensored on the L&M Radio Network. I'm your host, ClarissaVazquez, and joining me this evening is my fabulous co-host, the man known as Jax.
How you doing?
And we've got a great guest on the line tonight, folks. If you haven't heard of him, I highly recommend you go check out the Facebook page, check out the online magazine, Hollywood Ghost Hunters Magazine. It's a thing, folks. I've read it. It's awesome. And I can't wait for the next issue to come out because when we were at commercial break, Rick gave me a spoiler. But we've got Rick McCallum from Hollywood Ghost Hunters on the line with us. And Jax, I know you're chomping at the bit. You've got some questions for Rick.
I do. Rick, what is the creepiest investigation you've ever done?
That is a really good question. I'll tell you, I've done some at the Omen house, and that's not like Damien the Omen. It's after David Omen, and it's actually the house that's right next door to where the Manson family killed Sharon Tate and everything. Mm-hmm. And we've had some really weird stuff happen there. But I think one we just did was a little bizarre. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Real Mary King's Close in Edinburgh. A lot of the TV shows have gone there. It's actually part of the city, and I think it's from like the 1500s. Underground is still set up, and it's like half a city block, and then it's really cool, and underground. And I was able to get actually Anubis from England and Premier Paranormal and Scottish Paranormal, who were kind enough to take me all around St. Andrews and up to a couple castles and give me the grand tour and let me hunt with them. So I decided that I would set up a little para-unity investigation. And fortunately, my friend was the general manager of the Real Mary King's Close. So we were able to all of us together, and we split up into two groups. And I mean, this place is made out of rock, and it's underground. And we were there, all standing there, and all of a sudden we heard what sounded like a kid run across the floor above us. Now, this place is totally locked down. There's nobody in there. I mean, there's cameras everywhere, and because it's an attraction. And then right after that, we heard like what sounded like 4 or 5 people running after it. So we're like, whoa, now what's going on there? So we started, we went in different groups, and this was really weird. We're standing down where all these dolls and things are that people bring for this little girl that people see down there. So there's just hundreds of dolls and things like that. We were standing there, and I look over, and I see this one girl look up, so I know she's hearing what I'm hearing. And then I see the other 2 girls that were with me, start looking at each other, and they start looking up. And I said, "You guys are hearing something, aren't you?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "I am too. What are you hearing?" They go, "It's a heartbeat." I said, "Yeah, I hear it too. It clear as a bell." And I mean, it was like boom, 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 boom. And I mean, underground with nothing else around you, and all of us are hearing a heartbeat. Wow. That was freaky. But we start to walk up this one hill, and I mean, it's a very, very steep hill, and as you go walking up, the manager stops and he goes, "Wait, look at that." And we stop, and there's a door up the way, and you can see the handle moving like somebody's trying to open the door. And he goes, "There's nobody in here." So I mean, there was just the atmosphere of the place, and the fact that there was so much activity going on around us that wasn't like this might be something. I mean, it was so loud, so so active that you expected things to pop out in front of you. So that was also a very good one.
Okay,
that is so cool.
Yeah. Why do you think worldwide? Why do you think there's such an abundance of paranormal activity
in Scotland itself?
Just across the world, pretty much.
I think about that a lot, and if things are starting to become more easy to see and more active, makes me wonder if somebody's trying to tell us something. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
You know, is there something coming that we should be paying attention to? I remember I said about 20 years ago, I told my dad and my stepmother, well, this would be about 25 years ago, because my dad died 23 years ago. I said, you know, I got a real bad feeling. And they said, what's that? I said, you watch the news. People are going to change. They're going to become more violent, more vicious. You're going to see things you've never seen in your life, right? And, I mean, if you looked over, you know, where people are being beheaded in mass and being lit on fire, and, you know, so people could all cheer while it was happening and stuff like that. And my dad asked me, he says, well, why do you think that's all going to happen? I said, I just have a feeling that the devil let the demons out. And he goes, really? And I said, watch and look around. I mean, people getting shot everywhere. I mean, you know, more people are getting shot in Chicago every night than they had getting shot over in Iraq, you know, during the war. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's amazing what's going on, you know, around the world. People blowing each other up, and, you know, it's not human nature to be doing those things, is my point.
No, you're absolutely right.
So your opinion, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jack.
So in your opinion, you think it's the negativity that's fueling all the paranormal activity going on right now?
Well, I don't know if it's just that. I mean, I see anything in life as a balance. If there are more, let's say, negative energies coming up, I'm sure that an equal and opposite amount of positive energies are coming up. So the fact that there's more energy coming up, and now, I mean, as you guys are well aware, with all the things on TV and radio and stuff like that, of this, you know, and the equipment that people can buy easily to try and ghost hunt, it's becoming much more mainstream. So there's a lot more people looking for it that before 20 years ago wouldn't even conceived of saying this might be a spirit, this might be that, this or that. So a lot of it is the TV shows, a lot of it is the new equipment, and I think a lot of it is there's just a lot more stuff.
Right. We had a question come in, and it's actually from our producer, Daryl, and he wants to know, throughout your experience, do you believe there's a certain time of day or night that is better for ghosts to appear or to actually capture footage, be it video, photographic, or audio footage of ghosts? Well, for me, I like nighttime for several reasons. Mm-hmm.
Number one, it's quiet. Mm-hmm. Okay, trying to ghost hunt during the day, you know, cars going by, you know, people talking, the TV's on, you know, it's harder to do. It's easier to pick up a spirit, an apparition, movement, or anything else on a night vision camera in total darkness than it is trying to get one in light. So just for me, I much prefer being, you know, at night, lights out, you know, with the equipment. Mm-hmm. Have I seen spirits in the day? Yes, indeed I have. I used to live in a house in Texas where everybody that came there all said, man, this is the most haunted place I've ever been. And everybody there saw the spirits during the daytime. So, you know, can they come? Yes, during the daytime, absolutely. But I think if you're really trying to ghost hunt, you would have to, you know, pretty much debunk almost everything that happens during the day because of the crossover, the audio you would hear, you know, people walking around, you know what I mean, talking, you know, so it'd be hard to get EVPs. It would be hard to get anything video, especially since video is hard to get of something that's somewhat translucent or transparent almost with a lot of light. It just fades them out. So, I mean, you know, it'd be very hard to see them. All you see, and what we used to see is like a ripple of movement, you know, and so we knew something was there.
That is so cool. That, you know, and to see it during the daytime, especially since, like you pointed out, you know, there is a lot of noise pollution. There is a lot of light pollution that can contaminate your video, photographic, or audio data. Mm-hmm. You know, to actually see and experience things during the daytime. That's, you know, that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, just to answer Daryl's question, I'm not sure if I did a good enough job of it. I believe, because he asked what time of the day or night, I think it's easier to spot them at night because it's quiet, you can listen and things like that. But I think that they're probably just as active during the day as they are at night. But nobody hears them because there's so much noise. People are sitting there watching TV, the phone's on, you're on the phone, the microwave's going off. You don't hear the little things that you'll hear when you're sitting there quiet listening.
Right.
I agree.
So, did you have another question on the list, Jax?
I'll think of one.
You'll think of one.
I have one for you guys. If you could go ghost hunting anywhere in the world, where would you go?
There's a number of places on my bucket list that I have to hit. Lep Mansion is definitely on the top 5.
I did that one in August.
I've never been there. That one's always interested me.
Yeah,
Isn't that the one that's it's in St. Louis?
Yeah, it's in St. Louis, and I had the pleasure of investigating that one in August while we were on the Great American Paranormal Road Trip.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, Jax is saying woohoo because we actually met up with him and his team in Massachusetts and jointly investigated the S.K. Pierce mansion. So.
Well, look at you guys.
Yeah.
I should have my show and bring you on.
Yes, you should.
Yes.
Except for one thing, I don't have a show, so I'll just have to talk to you here.
Anytime.
Absolutely.
No, I think I've got 2 places that are at the top of my bucket list right now. And one of them is Lep Castle, which I'm so jealous that you're potentially going there in March. I'm so jealous. And the other one is actually Alcatraz.
Yeah, I got invited to that place too, and then it turned out the person who was inviting didn't have enough clout to actually make it work.
Wow.
So that was kind of a bummer, but yeah, that's one I want to go to. Unfortunately for me, my bucket list is actually real buckets. I've got the galvanized, gallon and a half one from Sears, and then the plastic one from Walmart. It's just not as exciting as everybody else's bucket list.
Now, mine is actually, it's a list on paper, but I got to knock off, several locations this last summer, and so that was really cool for me to get to do it. But I've done the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. I've done Slater Mill in Rhode Island, and I've done a lot of the big places, but yeah, Lep Castle is at the top of the list, and so is Alcatraz for me.
Yeah, I've never been to Lep. I've never been to Alcatraz. So there are 2 places that I do want to go. It's funny, and this is for your listeners, and especially for Jack. One thing that I finally figured out, I always had, I want to go to Scotland. There's something about Scotland I really want to do. I really want to blah, 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 blah. Finally, I went, hey, dumbass, go to Scotland. So finally, I, saved up enough pennies, and I went to Scotland, and I fell in love with the place. So now I go to Scotland for a month every year and just ghost hunt the heck out of the whole place, because every place in Scotland is haunted. Matter of fact, I got one of the best K2 readings I've ever gotten 3 floors below the Travel Lodge in Edinburgh.
Oh, that is so cool.
And another one I got that was really good was on the side of a mountain called Arthur's Seat, which is right in downtown Edinburgh, and they have a old dilapidated chapel, which is actually one corner in a wall, that have all caved in. Mm-hmm. And I walked up there with my friend Brian Harley from Premier Paranormal. We went up there, and we're up there probably about 10 at night, and it looks like it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's the weirdest thing. But we were getting K2 readings that were instantly answering us, and whenever I ask K2 things, I always confirm it. I don't just take one and say, oh, that's it. Like I'll say, are you one of the priests that was here? And it goes off all 5 lights. And I'd say, so then you are one of the priests, and it goes off all 5 lights. And I'll say, okay. Anybody else here? And it goes off all 5 lights. I said, so there is somebody else here. So I don't just go one time and just hope for the best because, sometimes you can get stuff from other places. But this place, I would say there's no chance of anything else interfering because I'm on the side of a mountain. There is absolutely nobody around. There's no houses. There's no electricity. There's no microwaves. There's nothing, right? So, when this is going off, it's pretty interesting.
That is so cool. And what about cell phones? Was there cell phone reception there? There
was. I guess. Well, I had mine turned off, and he had his turned off, so.
Okay. Yeah, cell phones are notorious for monkeying with K2 meters, and my team, for the most part, has stopped using K2s just because, there's so many things that can give you a false positive with them. But if you're in an area, where there's no chance of naturally occurring interference, like cell signal or random radio transmission or some, microwave or something like that, then, and you're getting K2 hits, that's pretty compelling.
Well, I've also have a way of doing it that the other groups always sit there and they go, man, that is really cool. I don't know how that works for you, because they'll stand there and for all night and nothing will happen. I'll walk over and start doing it. It'll just go one right after the other. But like the one that's in Travelodge, I go down there and I had something else happen, so I brought the guy back down and I started up. I said, "Oh, are you the spirit?" And it starts going all that, and I went, "Look, I can't have this keep going all 5 lights because then we can't communicate. You have to go back down to 1 when I tell you and then come back so that we can get something to happen, okay?" So I said, "Go back to 1," and it instantly goes down to 1. He looks at me, right? So we start doing it, and it starts going again. I said, "Go back to 1," and it instantly goes back to 1, which interference cannot make you change it to go down.
Right.
It could by itself, but the fact that it's going down instantly when I'm telling it to is kind of compelling.
That's really compelling.
Then I was asking it, I said, "Is there anybody else here?" And it went off. I said, "Okay, I'm going to ask you, can you light this up when I get there?" And you guys will instantly see what I was doing, which I don't think I've ever seen anybody else do. I said, "When I get to the number, please light this up." I said, "Are there 2?" And it goes all 5 lights, right? Or 4 lights, whatever it was, but it really sparked up. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Are there 3, 4, 5, 2, and boom, the lights hit again." And I was like, okay, that's, it's taking, what I try to do is take the possibility of coincidence out.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because you can get false readings, you can get that, but when you can get the same answer, even when you're trying to fool it, and it still answers, to me, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. That's actually really cool. I wouldn't mind seeing that in action. I don't know if you've got video footage that you can share with me of that happening, but that's really
actually
cool.
I do.
Woo!
I am a real ghost hunter. I actually film things.
That's awesome. Sometimes. You and I both know,
you too, Jack, as soon as you turn off your camera, everything happens.
Right.
Dirty little buggers.
Or else things are going on just outside of view of the camera, or you don't have a camera pointed in that direction, or never fails.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Actually, one of the weird things is, and a lot of the Scottish people have kind of started taking me around because they're like, wait a minute, something is really odd with this guy, right? And I was like, finally they told me, they said, you do stuff that we've never seen anybody else do before. And I said, well, what are you talking about? Right? I said, I just use the same equipment and everything else. They said, no. He says, we went out to Hales Castle one night, you and me and Carol. He says, and we're walking in. Now, Hales Castle is in the middle of a field, and it's got like the long grass that's up, about 2 feet high. Mm-hmm. And the closest house is probably 200 yards away at least. So it's out in the middle of a field, right? And we go walking in there. There's nothing but the moonlight out there. There's no lights or anything else. And I go walking up the stairs, and I turn around and I look out into the field. They said, what are you doing? I said, something out there. And they went, there's nothing out there. And I said, I'm telling you, I point out there. I said, there's something right there, right? And they go, no, there's nothing out there. And I said, yeah, there is. So the one guy walks down to the gate, and he looks down the way, and he comes back. He goes, I couldn't see anything. I said, okay. So we go in, and we ghost hunt the whole place, and we come out, and we're standing there. I'm still standing on the stairs looking over to the spot. And they said, what are you looking at? I said, I'm telling you, there's something right there. And they said, it's dark. You can't see anything. And I pointed my finger. I said, there's something right there. And when I did, an old-time lantern lit up right where I was pointing in the middle of the field and went like maybe 5 to 10 steps and vanished.
Wow.
And the two of them just looked at me like, you have got to be kidding me. And the one guy goes, how did you know that was out there? I said, kept trying to tell you it was there. And he goes, yeah, but how did you know it was out there? I said, don't know. Just knew it was.
That is so cool.
So that kind of stuff happens to me, quite a bit.
Wow. Yeah, I just got a message from Chris. He's been sending me feedback because this is the return, the show's return to the airwaves and everything. And I messaged him. I'm like, I really want to investigate with this guy. And Chris is going, I know, right?
Well, one thing was for sure, we'll have fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And, and I think I've sent the invitation out before, the next time you're in Colorado, hit me up and, and I'll show you some.
I definitely would. I lived in Colorado for several years. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Where did you live?
I lived out in Lakewood.
Okay.
And one of the places that I did ghost hunt was Glenwood Springs.
I live 14 miles from Glenwood Springs. I live in Rifle.
Okay, yeah, because I went through there. The one place I really wanted to go was the Hotel Denver. And I did get to walk through there a little bit, trying to see if I could get anything. But everybody says, why don't you do this hotel? And say, well, you realize the lights are on in hotels. They have guests. There's music downstairs. There's people walking through the hallways. Makes it pretty hard.
The Hotel Denver, they swear up and down it's not haunted. But the big haunted hotspot is the Hotel Colorado.
I've seen a lot of reports from the people that are there. That say the Hotel Denver is very haunted.
Yeah, and that's
I've heard the reports too. The people don't want the people there don't want it to become a haunted hotel.
Yeah, well, and it's the same thing with the Hotel Colorado. I mean, there've been so many books and write-ups on the Hotel Colorado, and management just will not acknowledge it. And I've had the pleasure of investigating that location twice, and
let's make it 3 times. I'll meet you because I love Glenwood Springs.
Come on over. Open invitation. You are more than welcome to come, and we'll check it out. I've got a couple of favors I can pull. I might be able to get us some access to that hotel.
That would be cool. Yeah, actually, what I used to do, because we used to have a business in Denver. We had an exhibit show down at Kurgan Hall, and then at the convention center we moved over, called the Home Decorating Remodeling Show, which was a huge show. We had that for years. But what I used to do when I would drive back and forth from California and from Colorado, I would stop in Glenwood Springs for a day, and I would go over and I would rent a bike and then ride my bicycle down the river.
Yeah.
And come back. I always thought that was a whole lot of fun. But
ride the bike through Glenwood Canyon. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I love Glenwood Springs. But yeah, it's amazing to me. There's so many things if people will just open themselves up to it. And one of the things I try and tell people, I said, look, you ever get that feeling somebody's watching you and the hair stands up on the back of your neck? And they said, yeah. I said, you realize that was brought to you. That's your instincts. It's from evolution, because not only, when we first started around were we predators, we were also prey. I said, so, our creator was smart enough to put in things to try and warn us, hey, something's up. I said, and because we become so civilized, nobody listens anymore.
Right.
And I said, if you feel that, there's a good chance something is looking at you. Pay attention. Right? So some people started doing that when they go something. They said, man, I feel like something's here. I said, then pay attention, try and figure out what it is. And then they said, once I started doing that, they said I started getting a lot more stuff. And Actually, somebody on the radio asked me one time, they said, well, what is the best tip you can give for ghost hunting? I said, the absolute thing, if you want to see spirits and things. They said, yes. I said, stop ghost hunting. They said, wait a minute, what do you mean? I said, go to the locations, be yourself, talk to them like you're at their house. Stop hunting them, right?
Yep.
And they said, yeah, never really thought about that. And they said, do you ever provoke? I said, if I came to your house and called you a son of a gun, I said, would you want me to stay? They went, no. And I said, what makes you think they would?
Absolutely. That you hit the nail on the head with that one, because that's something Jax and I have actually talked about on the air in past shows. Is how bad provoking is, and it's really sad because we're seeing a lot of it on television right now.
Yeah, and it's usually by the weakest of the weak.
And and so people who go out there, they're in it for the thrill. They're not in it for the research or to help people or anything like that. They go out and they emulate what they see on TV, and it's sad.
And while I've been on TV shows and stuff, ghost hunting, you have to remember that those are TV shows.
Yep.
And it's, some of the things that they do are not exactly what you should do when you're doing it. I'll give you, for instance, I was on a show called Coast to Coast AM.
I've been on that show.
Yeah. Well, then you know what I'm talking about. And I was on there, and they played a piece of tape from an investigation I was on. And somebody called in, they said, you are by far the most polite ghost hunter we've ever heard. I said, why? And they said, well, because when you said, is there anybody here? Can you make this light up? And it lit up. And you went, well, thank you. Can you make it a little lighter? Okay, thank you. Right? And they said, you're the most polite. They said, do you ever provoke? I said, never. Never, never, never.
Yeah, I had an investigator once who asked the question. He said, I understand that you didn't used to be a nice person. Are you a nice person now? And we did actually get an EVP response, and it was really terrible quality, so it's not even on the website, but the response was nope. And
pretty straightforward answer. Nah.
Yeah, nope. and we picked on that investigator for a while because he was so polite on it, so polite about it. I understand that you didn't used to be a nice man, but are you a nice person now? And nope. And
I wish I would have come back and said, you do realize I'm not a person now?
Well, maybe that's what they were referring to. I don't know. But on that subject, and I know Jax and I have talked about this pretty in depth, and I've got a very strong opinion on this. How do you feel about investigators making potential spirits aware of the fact that they're dead? Do you advocate for that, or?
Well, sometimes it's just part of the conversation, but I don't like people that go out of their way to say that. You know what I mean? It just seems tacky to me. It's just like the same reason I will not ghost hunt a cemetery.
Okay.
Cemetery to me is sacred ground. They're in the ground. They were put there to rest. Leave them alone. That's the way I look at it. I mean, I don't mind if other people do it. I mean, it's just, for me, that just, I don't want to do that. But I don't think you gain anything by telling them they're dead. If they're communicating with you, that's what you're looking for. You don't need to, kind of beat them over the head. I will tell you, one of the most satisfying things that ever happened is possibly having crossed somebody over.
Oh.
And that's, I was actually out at a house with some people that I knew, and we had gone through the whole house. Nothing was happening. And finally I asked the girl, I said, why do you think there's anything here? Did anybody get murdered? They said, no, but there's somebody murdered in the window right next to us. So, well, why don't you ask if that person is here? So she did, and all of a sudden the K2 meter went boom. It hadn't gone off one time all night, in hours. All of a sudden it starts responding to everything. So I asked, I said, is there anybody here who wants to cross over? And it goes crazy, right? And I was able to, by asking yes and no questions, that it was a man. So I said, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to head towards the light. Do you understand? And it goes off, and I said, okay, start heading towards the light, right? And then I'd say, are you going? And then the lights would go off again. I mean, it was very compelling. It just was like talking to it, and it was answering.
Mm-hmm.
And finally I said, look, if you're really going, I want to see the lights on this go down so I know that you're going away from me, right? And it goes down to 3. I said, keep going, and it goes down to 2, right? And the 2 girls are looking at me like, what is going on? And I said, okay, if you're that close, can you give us a sign that you made it? And the girl on the left of me, her head snaps around, and I turned around too because I heard something. And I looked at her, and you guys know exactly how this works. I said, what did you hear? Right? I'm not going to tell her what I heard so she can say, oh, I did too. Right?
Right.
I looked at her, I said, you heard something? She goes, I did. I said, what did you hear? She goes, I heard a man's voice. I said, I did too. What did it say? And she looked at me. I mean, she had the astonished look on her face. She goes, I heard him say goodbye. I said, so did I. So that one makes me wonder. Makes me wonder.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
That's touching.
I mean, I hope that's what happened. You know, I don't know. No, you know, that's one thing about ghost hunting. Everything that you do is subjective and conjecture. You know, you can come to a conclusion that leads you there by debunking everything that you can, and what you have left is curious.
Right.
You know, that you can say, this is curious. This one could be something. You know.
Wow, that is crazy.
But even relaying that one to me still kind of gives me some chills.
Well, I've got the chills now, and it takes a lot to make me sit back and go, whoa, you know, because I've been doing this forever, and you know, and I'm pretty desensitized.
You're a puppy. Come on now.
I'm not going to reveal my age on the air, but I have been doing this for a very long time, and but I am pretty desensitized to a lot of it. And so it takes a lot for me to sit back and go, whoa. And I just had a whoa moment. That was cool.
Sweet. I don't want to say how long I've been doing this, but the piece of equipment that I used when I first started ghost hunting was a little slate with a piece of chalk to draw stick figures.
Yeah, I haven't been doing it that long, but I will use the words analog tape recorder, Polaroid camera, and a compass.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, that was high tech. I mean, that came in 20 years after I got started. It's like, finally, wait, there's stuff. There's a Polaroid camera. I can take pictures, and woohoo!
Yeah, see, you know, the newbie investigators today, they don't know the struggle of having to lug the analog tape recorder and the Polaroid camera, you know, and the flashlight.
Well, you're walking along. Back then, it looked like we were carrying boom boxes, like we were going to dance somewhere or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Ghetto blasters.
Well, I had actually, I won this on this show that I did, Sail of the Century, a video recorder, which is one of the very earliest video recorders. And it actually, the camera plugged into the video recorder that you ran all the stuff, you know, that sat on the top of your TV. So you had to cart that big son of a gun around with you while you're trying to get any videos. Like, oh, this isn't going to work. This thing weighs like 25 pounds. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, not very portable.
Yeah. Well, now I get better stuff off my phone.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of controversy right now over whether or not phones are appropriate to use on investigations. There's some people that really advocate for it, and others that are very opposed to it. So
I use mine for pictures. That's it. I don't use it to try and catch any EVPs or anything like that. You know, but just you know, whenever I turn it on, it's in airplane mode. You know, and then I take pictures with it and turn it off.
Very cool. Well, Rick, we've only got a couple minutes left with you. So where can
dang it!
I know. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, and fruit flies like bananas, but that's another story.
So where can people, where can they find out more about you and Hollywood Ghost Hunters and Hollywood Ghost Hunters Magazine? Where can people find you?
Well, they can find me under Rick McCallum on Facebook, or they can find me under Hollywood Ghost Hunters on Facebook, or they can follow me on Hollywood Ghost Hunters Magazine on Facebook, or they can go to the magazine itself, which is at hghmag.com, and the initials are short for Hollywood Ghost Hunters Magazine, so it's hghmag.com. And it's free, so if you don't like it, you don't get your money back.
Now, I actually really enjoy the magazine, and I'm not one of those people. I don't subscribe to, a whole bunch of the magazines and stuff, because a lot of them are very biased, and it's usually the same old stuff. But, your magazine is actually one that, when I first stumbled on it, I really liked it. And so I went back and I'm looking, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool and this is cool. And I think the most recent one I did was you did the feature article on Kane Hodder. And
yeah, and he had, by the way, a very cool paranormal story in there that he had never told anybody.
Oh, he had never told anybody.
He had never told that story till he said, and he told me, he says, look, I'm going to tell you because it's for the magazine. He said, I've never told anybody this. So people out there, go to HGH, read the Kane interview, and you'll be shocked by this one paranormal thing that happened to him.
Yeah, because that was a really cool story.
Written by a fantastic writer, I must say.
Nothing like a
and
little...
humble. And humble, too. The guy's handsome and humble. That.
Nothing like shameless self-promotion there.
Well, yeah, I'm a slut. I admit it.
But Rick, we want to thank you so much for coming on the show, and we wish you nothing but the best in your travels and your investigations and all of your endeavors. And we're going to have you back on the show.
Hey, anytime you want me.
Yes, we're definitely going to have to do that. And, next time you're coming through Colorado, you hit me up. And
I don't, plan on it because frankly, I don't drive through Colorado anymore. I mean, I used to go through there all the time because, I'd be going back to Chicago, or I'd be going to Tennessee, or, or going back to Denver. So I was going through there all the time, but I don't do that anymore because we sold the shows. So I'm just kind of bumbling along now, usually taking a plane.
Well, maybe there has to be a special trip then.
I would really consider that, just because, I would really like to see, the stuff in Glenwood Springs, with somebody that knows what's going on.
Oh,
Waverly Hills.
Oh, that's
been there.
Right.
Yeah. Hint. Waverly Hills.
Been there.
Yep. Yeah, Jax's organization and mine, we're going to do a joint venture at Waverly Hills next summer. So,
well, I will tell you something very quickly. We were in room 502. The girl that I was with, I felt something brush up against my forearm, and I thought it was her hair, but her hair wasn't long enough, and I was too far away. So I was like, Right, and that's where the nurse supposedly touches stuff. Mm-hmm. So I told her I got touched, and she goes, I've never been. And she goes, oh, my God, something just caressed my face. So we walk out the door, and she sees a figure dart into this room right down the way. So I take off after it, and I get inside of it before the other two people. And I'm standing there, and it's empty except for a couple of boxes. And I'm looking around, and all of a sudden I hear, so I freeze. I think there's an attack dog in there, right?
Right.
So I just freeze. And I turn around, and I'm looking all around, and I turn, and the two people that are with me, one's a guy, one's a girl, and I turned around and looked at them, and they both have these shocked looks on their face, and I said, please tell me you heard that. And they couldn't even respond. They just nodded their heads up and down, and their eyes looked like saucers. I went, what the hell was that? But it was a definite, very deep, menacing growl, which I have to say, I have been growled at 5 different times with people that were there that heard it.
Wow. That is crazy. So,
well, what it means, and so do I.
Yeah. We may have to pay a little extra attention to that room and see if we can duplicate your results.
Yeah, if you walk out the door of 502, it's the first room on the left-hand side of the hallway is where that happened.
Okay.
It might have been the second one because there was another door right next to it, so it might have been the second one, but it was right if you walk out to the left and go left, it's the first one on your left. So.
Very cool. Yeah,
by the way,
we're going to have to check that out.
I also heard singing when I was in the death tunnel.
Ooh.
And here's a tip for you. If you want to find the most active place there, it's not the death tunnel. It's not 502. It's a place that they had never let anybody else ghost hunt, but because Kane asked them, they let me and my group go in there. We went in one at a time and sat in the lobby in a chair by ourselves with nobody else around. And it was the creepiest place we've ever been. I mean, Kane, who's very big of a skeptic, even said, yeah, he says, I'm sitting there, and he says, and I can hear the footsteps coming towards me. He says, I thought it was you guys, but there was nobody there. And when I ran the tape back, you could hear the leather shoes, and nobody on a ghost hunt's wearing leather shoes.
Right.
I mean, you can hear it, coming towards him. I mean, I heard the things. And the scariest one, this is real quick, another one of our guys is sitting there, and we went in. Now, this is a guy who's turned over cars at 80 miles an hour. He's a stunt guy.
Right.
And I said, did you hear anything? He goes, I've never been more scared in my life. Right? This guy's not afraid of nothing. Right? So I looked at him and I said, why were you scared? He goes, well, I heard the door rattling like all you guys did. He says, and I was sitting there waiting for my 15 minutes to be up. He says, and then I heard a sound. He says, and I do a lot of martial arts stuff and things with swords. I said, yeah. And he goes, I heard right behind me what sounded like a sword sliding out of a steel scabbard.
Whoa.
I said, you're kidding. He goes, no. He says, it took everything I have not to get up and run. And I said, you should have, man. If you start hearing swords and crap, there might be a nut in here that's got a sword, But see if they'll let you sit in the lobby and just go in there for like 10, 15 minutes alone and just sit there in the dark and just listen. I heard furniture moving. I heard the door, somebody at the door rattling the door. I heard footsteps. I mean, go try that.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have to see if we can make that happen.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was my hot tip for the day.
Yes. Well, Rick, again, we want to thank you for being such an awesome guest. We're going to have you back on the show. I mean, that's just all there is to it.
Anytime you want me. And tell your listeners to look for HGH Mag, because in the books I recommend section, there might be something in there by somebody named, well, let's see, ClarissaVazquez.
Ah! I wonder who that is.
Never heard of her.
Yeah, who is that girl?
Who's that crazy redhead?
Yeah, so that's already in the works, but I'm still writing the next magazine. And the hard part is, by the way, if there's anybody out there who knows a lot of stuff about websites, send me a thing. I need another guy to help me out besides the two I have. Actually, after I write it, getting it put up onto the website is the thing that takes a long time. So I'm going to have to actually learn how to do that myself so I can just do it and not bother my friends. So... So I better let you go because I know I've used up my time, but appreciate you having me on.
Oh, the pleasure was ours, Rick. Truly, it was great. And we want to thank you so much for being our first guest on the return of the show. And we will definitely be talking to you soon.
I don't know. If I was the first guest, you might not have another show. The networks might go, that's enough of that stuff.
Well, Daryl hasn't shut us down yet, so I think we're still okay.
All right. Well, Daryl, you be nice to them.
Good night.
Wow. That was creepy.
That was Daryl.
Sound like my old girlfriend.
Oh, dear.
And that was really creepy. Good night, honey. Ah!
Tell Jason I will be looking for Jason, and tell Kane Potter Daryl said hello and Katie said hello. In fact, we'll probably give him a call later on tomorrow anyway.
Well, there you go. If you got his number, call him.
Yeah, we got to sell. He's cool.
He's a knucklehead. I've known him for 37 years. Somebody asked me one time, they said, Kane, for that long, you must know where the bodies are buried. I said, of course I do. I buried them.
That's awesome. But Rick, thank you again, and we'll definitely be in touch.
All right, talk to you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Rick.
Rick McCallum, ladies and gentlemen, you can find his magazine and find out more about him on hghmag.com. And we've almost reached the end of our show, Jax. Time flies when you're having fun, and according to Rick, fruit flies like bananas. Is that how he said it?
Yeah, it was something like that, wasn't it?
Something like that. But coming up next week, we have another Rick coming to the show. We're going to be joined by Rick Hale, and he's going to be talking about his new book, Behold, Shocking True Tales of Terror and some other spooky stuff.
Woohoo!
And
Can't wait.
yeah, and Rick's another one. Rick Hale and I go way back to the days when Para-Scope was on the air. Rick also had a show on a previous network that Para-Scope was on. And that's how we met. And I've come to know him and respect him very highly as an investigator. And for him to put out this book is saying something. I cannot wait to get my hands on it. So he's gonna be our guest next week. And but awesome. Yeah, wow, to have Rick McCallum on the show. Talking about some of his adventures and everything, and I'm still jealous that he's going to Ireland in March. Oh.
I know that's that's in my top 5 of my bucket list as well.
Well, not many people know, but even though my last name is Vasquez, I'm actually very Irish. I have a Puerto Rican last name because my son has a Puerto Rican last name, and I kept my ex-husband's name for the sake of my son, yada, yada, yada. And so, people hear my name and they automatically think Latina, and they see this little white redhead lady and they're like, well, you don't look anything like I expected. So I definitely want to go to Ireland and see, my ancestral homeland. And Daryl, you are not being nice. Daryl just called me a witch, which I am a witch, but just because I'm Irish doesn't automatically make me a witch, and just because I'm a witch doesn't automatically make me Irish. It just happily coincides. but Jax, we have reached the end of our show.
Ooh, yes.
I know.
Won't bite too quick.
But we want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in tonight. And thank you so much for joining us for our return to the airwaves. It's been 3 years in the making, but we're very happy to have Para-Scope Uncensored back on the air. And be sure to tune in to Hidden World on Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern in Studio B on lnmradionetwork.com. Where Chris and I next week are going to be talking to Jeff Woolwine. We're going to be talking about UFOs and ghosts and maybe a possible war between the two. Ooh. And, of course, tune into Para-Scope Uncensored next Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern in Studio B, where we will be talking to Rick Hale about his new book, and we're going to be talking about ghosts. So for Jax, Chris, Daryl, Katie, myself, and the rest of the LNM Radio Network family, have a great night, everyone, and may all your ghosts be friendly.
Stay spooky, everybody.